Hi everyone, my name is Vanessa van Dijk, and in today's video I want to make something very visible that most people usually do not track at all, which is how much sodium can build up in a normal day of eating. And for this video I want to focus more on common South and Southeast Asian style meals, because I know many of you watching are from India, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Vietnam, the Philippines or surrounding countries. And the point is that many everyday homemade looking or even healthy looking meals, whether they come from street food stalls, restaurants or your own home, can still become very high in sodium because of the things around the food. And personally, I think this matters not only for things like high blood pressure, but also much more for the skin than people currently realize. Especially if you deal with puffiness, water retention, inflammation, or breakouts that seem to fluctuate a lot and can feel difficult to get under control. So I made 3 examples: breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And keep in mind, this is only the 3 main meals. So no extra snacks, no extra sauces, no desserts, no second drinks. All of those would obviously add even more sodium, but I left them out because they vary so much from person to person. So for this video I only focus on the 3 main meals of the day, which I think many of you watching probably eat them in some form. Okay, so let's start with breakfast. For each meal I prepared 2 examples so you can see how sodium can add up in different ways. Now on the left we have a more common breakfast like instant noodles, banh mi, dipping sauce and milk tea. And on the right we have something that looks lighter and healthier like idli, samba, coconut chutney, pickle, a yogurt drink and a tea or water. And what I want you to notice is that the sodium does not only come from the obvious salty food like the instant noodles, but it also comes from the broth, the sauce, the processed fillings, the chutney, the samba and the pickle. So even when your meal looks more balanced, more traditional or less processed, it can still add up very quickly. And this is where I think most of us underestimate the issue. Because you may think, I don't eat chips, I don't eat burgers, I don't eat Western fast food. But that does not automatically mean your sodium intake is slow. Because in many meals, sodium is not coming from one single obvious food. It is coming from many smaller things added together. And breakfast alone can already bring you closer to or even above the recommended daily amount of sodium, which should be less than 2000 milligrams a day. And that is not really a lot if you are eating meals like this regularly. And then we have lunch, where basically the same thing happens again. On the left you can see a noodle soup or pho-style meal with spring rolls, dipping sauce, pickled vegetables and a drink. And on the right you can see something that looks much more healthy: grilled chicken, rice, vegetables, soup, yogurt, dressing and green tea. But again, the sodium is hiding in the parts you often do not count. Like the broth, the dipping sauce, the fish sauce, the soy-based dressing, the pickled vegetables, the soup, the bottled drink. And this is why I think sodium can be so misleading, because a meal can look fresh, it can look light, it can look homemade, it can even look like something you would choose when you're trying to improve your health. But once you add the sauces, broths and all the extra sides around the meal, the sodium can be almost the whole daily limit in just one meal. And I think that is really important if you struggle with skin issues, because you may be looking at sugar, dairy, oil, calories or skincare. But you may not be asking, how much sodium am I actually getting every day? And maybe even more importantly, is my body constantly being pushed into a fluid-retaining, puffy, inflamed state? Because if that is happening every day, it can slowly become an issue over time. And as if that wasn't already enough, we also still have dinner. Again, on the left, we have a more common dinner example with biryani, curry, pickle, papat, raita and a drink. And on the right, we have a lighter looking dinner, like grilled fish or tandoori chicken, rice, vegetables, dal, vegetable curry, chutney, pickle and a yogurt drink. And again, even the healthier looking option can still go above the daily sodium recommendation. Not because the food is bad, that is not what I'm trying to say, but because dinner often has multiple sodium sources at once, like the seasoned rice, curry gravy, dal, chutney, pickle, papat, sauces, restaurant seasonings, and sometimes salted drinks or sides. So when you add breakfast, lunch and dinner together, the total can easily end up at 5,000 milligrams of sodium, or even more, without you feeling like you ate anything extreme. And you may not even feel like you're eating junk food. You may feel like you're just eating normal food, or even healthy food. But your sodium exposure can still become very high, sometimes even extreme. And if this happens every day for months or even years, I think it becomes very relevant to talk about. Now, in case you're wondering how this connects to skincare, acne, breakouts, puffiness, and inflammation, the reason I connect it is because sodium is so closely tied to fluid balance in the body. And when you already notice things like puffiness, water retention, swelling, or pressure-filled breakouts, I think it makes sense to at least ask whether sodium could be part of that pattern, or maybe even one of the things that sets it off. Because usually when acne is discussed, you are told to think about oil, bacteria, hormones, clogged pores, or skincare. And yes, those things can matter. But what I think is missing is the internal state of the tissue before the breakout happens. Because many people with acne do not just experience a clogged pore. You may experience swelling, pressure, puffiness, inflammation, cycle-related changes, sudden changes in skin texture, a face that looks different from one day to the next. And to me, that looks much more like a fluid and inflammation problem than people usually acknowledge. So my question is, what happens when your body is constantly exposed to high sodium while you're not getting enough whole foods, potassium-rich foods, and natural fluid balance support? Could that make your skin more reactive? Could that increase puffiness? Could that worsen inflammation? Could that make breakouts feel deeper, more swollen, or more pressure-filled? I cannot say that sodium is the only cause of acne, but I do think it may be one of the most overlooked factors, especially for those of you who feel like your breakouts are connected to swelling, water retention, digestion, and inflammation. And I'm not saying you should never eat these foods again. That is not realistic, and I also do not think that that is necessary. But the goal is that you start noticing where sodium is actually coming from, because sometimes it is not the main food. It is the extras, like I just showed you in these examples. And reducing even some of those things can already make a big difference, so that you're getting closer to the upper limit of around 2000 milligrams of sodium a day. And you do not have to make everything perfect overnight. But I do think many people would massively benefit from simply lowering their daily sodium exposure and seeing how their body responds. Not just for skin, but also for puffiness, inflammation, water retention, and long-term health. Because personally, this was the missing factor I never really considered. And honestly, I wish someone had told me this earlier. So I hope this video helped you look at sodium in a different way. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!